I'm going to turn it over for arguments. Mr. Guinan, you may go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, there are, as this court is well aware from the PSI, there are a number of positives to be found in the PSI and in the facts in this case. First of all, Mr. Wasson did sustain his injury, a serious back injury, while in the line of duty, while working for the Scottsbluff Police Department, working for this community. That injury led to prescriptions and ultimately to the abuse of prescription drugs, in this case opioids for the most part. As Ms. Chaluka notes in her letters and so on, he did, Mr. Wasson did come forward and fully. He confessed before he was charged, before he was arrested. He sat down with State Patrol Investigator Newmiller and gave a around 2-hour interview and fully talked through what he had done over this period of time. He has shown great remorse. He admitted that he stole money, heroin, fentanyl, and right at the end here, when he had really lost control, he had stolen meth from the evidence room, which he traded for fentanyl with somebody on the outside. As I think his brother had noted in his letter, he has had 27 years of dedicated service to take into consideration. During that time, Mr. Wasson has worked some big cases for the PD and for this community, including the Hessler case in Mata. All this despite his back injury. There was a quote in one of the letters, maybe it was his brother, "Mistakes do not erase the contributions he made to the Scottsbluff and Guinan community and Nebraska." Again, he's taken full responsibility. Here is a man who was on the trajectory to be the chief of police, had spent nearly a quarter century, or maybe just slightly over a quarter century, in law enforcement, and served this community well over those years. Ultimately, he was motivated by addiction as opposed to greed. These were thefts, were not crimes of violence, they were not sexual in nature, they weren't predatory in that sense. And there were a number of letters that indicate he's a good, reliable neighbor, and noted that the public shame that he's brought upon himself is real and will last a lifetime. Of course, there are a number of negatives too within this PSI, as this court is well aware. As at least by the accounting, there were probably around 3 cases around that neighborhood of active cases that were affected by his thefts. One was the triggering, really ultimately the triggering event here, that some drugs were not located. There was a couple-day search. Really, at that point, led to ultimately the changes in the procedures for the police department with regard to their evidence room. Chief Spencer had indicated in his letter that Mr. Wasson was a close friend. He was grooming him as the next chief. He did call this the ultimate betrayal. He noted the amount stolen, 43 grams, and this was in the PSI as well, 43 grams of heroin, 209.5 grams of meth, 1,895 fentanyl pills, and slightly over $7,000 in cash. Chief Spencer also noted what really is the problem here, which was the immense damage to public trust and perception. The lost personnel from the department, the hurt morale within the department, and as this court is well aware, he had asked for and felt that a term of imprisonment would be appropriate. Operations Captain Kite also put in a statement, trusted Mr. Wasson for 25 years as a police officer, a close friend and confidant. He tarnished the badge. He felt that he is now nothing more than a thief, a drug dealer with a badge. He repeated the amount stolen and also thought that a prison sentence would be most appropriate. He did wonder how many qualified candidates did not apply given what happened in this case. And the department must rebuild that trust with the community. He had been aware of numerous comments from the community about this case. Captain Brass also very similar. She was involved in that search for that missing methamphetamine. Went on for a couple days. Mr. Wasson himself was involved. That was the one that ultimately led to the dismissal of that case by the county attorney's office. So ultimately, it was kind of the grist that led to this downfall with regard to the property room. She indicated the ongoing law enforcement relation with the community and the public had been problematic for a number of years. And this amplified. She noted the receipt of numerous calls, emails, upset people, and it strained further the relationship that had been in some trouble as of the last couple of years to a few years. She noted that officers who were clearly not involved had been receiving the grief as a result of what happened here. And noted, of course, that Mr. Wasson was a trusted person in a position of power when this occurred. And then lastly, Sergeant Enlow, the supervisor of the Detective Bureau, indicated he looked up to Brian Wasson, saw him as a top cop, a superstar investigator on the drug task force, did not suspect him of the addiction. As recent as 2021, he had no idea, though he had started in that relevant time period working closely, or much more closely than he had been when he was out on the street with Mr. Wasson. He did request cameras to be placed into the, ultimately into the evidence room, and those were put up. He felt that, or indicated that he felt that Mr. Wasson had obfuscated those cameras in part during this investigation, pre-investigation, covering up some of the thefts and so on. And he did note that Mr. Wasson violated his oath of office and the community criticism. So, Your Honor, it's not lost on me, in particular, that that the comments that Mr. Wasson served his community and served his community well for over a quarter century. In fact, I worked a homicide case out here, I suppose, around 15 years ago. And I would have worked with a Brian Wasson who I had no idea was using and apparently abusing opioids at the time. He was an addict, apparently, at that time. I don't know that being an opioid addict and as was indicated by Dr. Stoll, a functioning member of this community, a functioning member of the police department, are mutually exclusive. They certainly weren't mutually exclusive at that time, at least. Now, while the thefts themselves did not put the Scottsbluff Police Department out of business, it didn't affect their bottom line. What it did affect is the trust. Not only the trust in the faith in the department with the community, but also the trust and faith within the department between ranks, and then ultimately, maybe most serious, within the command structure, within those who knew Brian Wasson the longest, who worked closest with him. That's a trust and injury that continues on, and that series of trusts and violations are what are the real thing that was lost here. That is the real injury in this case. And those are broad, and those are going to be long-lasting. Brian, to Mr. Wasson, to his credit, did not, as of a year ago now, did not dig a deeper hole. He did start to climb out of that, and he's on that trajectory now. As this court is well aware, being a law enforcement officer is a tough and dangerous profession. It's often thankless. It does tend to employ or at least lead to a tough outer shell, types that have a tough outer shell. They deal with issues internally. They operate with that warrior ethos. And I don't know if Brian Wasson truly had no opportunities for assistance as he went along, as at least the medical records kind of indicate he was not getting the assistance medically. I don't know if he just had no opportunities or if he missed opportunities such as some type of counseling and so on. I don't know. I don't also know how he would be judged if he were to be judged today. I don't know if he'd be seen as a man who spent, 25 plus years as a dedicated servant to this community, to this law enforcement department, with the same frailties that we all have as human, or if he'd be viewed as a fraud, a phony, a thief. Ultimately, what I did know, Judge, though, that I thought was well worth bringing to this court's attention, as I know you're aware, whatever sentence this court imposes today, I wanted to draw attention to a couple of comments. Ms. Gonzalez, the Community Action Health Center professional, noted, "I look forward to the possibility for Mr. Brian Wasson to be able to speak to other law enforcement that may have problems with alcoholism and drug addiction. He's very wise and helpful to others." Mr. Lordino, the former chief of Shadron, police chief, I've learned and understand through my work as a police officer that those addicted to drugs often fail to remain sober after rehabilitation. In many cases, they make a mistake and do not reach out to those supporting them. And before they know it, they fall from their triggers. Mr. Wasson's daughter Madison noted, although this has been an unfortunate situation, I do fully believe that everyone can come out of it better than they were before. And his daughter Carly also noted what he did was wrong, but it does not define him, not even in the slightest. He is fighting every day. Ultimately, Judge, I think how Mr. Wasson will be judged in this lifetime is not going to be by what brought him here today, but where he goes from here today. On the backside of whatever sentence this court imposes, Mr. Wasson has the opportunity, the unique opportunity, to assist other law enforcement officers. He has gone from a dedicated service career, spent 25 years, he rose through the ranks, handled big cases, and he's had a spectacular fall from grace. He's committed a terrible series of crimes, terrible series of violations of trust, both to the department and to this community. And whether or not he had the opportunity to receive help, he does have the opportunity to give help going forward. I do hope that he would, in the future, find the opportunity and look for the opportunity and search for the opportunity to, as the letters had indicated, go hands-on and help other law enforcement officers in the future that might be in the same shoes. He has a lot to bring to that, and he would bring, I think, make a difference. And if not for here, not for this community, then whatever community, I know that he is looking outside of this community possibly to move at some point. But whatever community he lands in, he has a lot to bring to that community, to those law enforcement officers, which in the end would be a positive out of all of this. That would be the legacy, Judge, that would be worth talking about. Also,
Thank you, Mr. Guinan.